Hello, welcome to class 5. Today we are going to be going over multiple sports. I am going to be going over the sport of water polo, and let's move on to the next slide. So, a quick overview of water polo. Water polo is a competitive team sport which is played between two teams, each team containing 7 players. The pool usually contains 14 players in total. I'll be going over the positions later in the slides. The game consists of around 4 quarters split into two quarters each and a halftime in between. In those 4 quarters, teams will attempt to score goals on the enemy goal over the duration of the game. Usually, every single game consists of 20 minutes, meaning that there are 5 minutes for each individual quarter. And of course, at the end of the game, with the team with the most goals wins. Next slide, please. So, some dryland exercises. Dryland exercises are mainly there to improve the muscle groups of certain areas, and water polo players usually need to train up certain areas to be more successful in the sport. For example, in water polo, it is usually preferable to train up the chest muscles, the arm muscles, your back muscles, and your leg muscles. And let me give you examples for each of these. So for your chest muscles, you need to train these up so that you are able to get out of the water and get higher out of the water. Because when you're playing water polo and you're trying to score the ball into the enemy goal, there's usually somebody who's right in front of you trying to guard you. And the best way to get over them is, of course, to use your chest muscles and get higher out of the water so that you can shoot the ball over them and above them into the enemy goal. And next, for your arm muscles, you need these primarily to be able to control the ball. This is an extremely important part in water polo because when you are in water polo, controlling the ball is the key to winning. You need to be able to control the ball so that you can not only shoot, but also be able to move with the ball. For example, let's say if I was swimming, right? And I had the ball with me. You would usually maybe swim head up freestyle with the ball in front of you. However, in some rare scenarios, you might have to pick up the ball and have to move with the ball as you are basically holding it. And to do this, you need to have extremely strong arm muscles to ensure that you are going to be able to keep control of the ball and prevent the ball from getting into enemy hands, which is a very important part. Back muscles are going to be needed specifically when you're shooting. That's because when you're shooting, the more force you have behind the ball when you throw it, the better. So, of course, your arms play a huge part in shooting. However, not many people know this. Your back muscles play an important part as well. Because when you curve your back, you're putting more motion into the ball itself, and therefore you're causing it to go faster and making it go stronger into the enemy goal. Finally, your legs. Your legs are probably one of the most important muscle groups in water polo. And supposedly, water polo players, or at least swim players, are supposed to have the strongest leg muscles of usually any sport. The reason being is that's because in swimming and water polo, you have to use your legs to move around. That is primarily how you will be moving around the pool and ensuring that how well you are going to be doing in the sport. That's because legs are a key part of the movement in water polo and the sustained movement throughout the entire game. And I'll be covering some dryland exercises of which you can do to address these muscle groups in the next slide. So here are some dryland exercises. So dryland exercises of which you can do to improve your muscles are some dryland exercises such as lunges. Lunges help develop your thigh muscles and improve your hip mobility. These are good for treading. Your thigh muscles are basically, of course, the muscles in your legs. And what you're going to need those for is treading. Treading is basically an egg beater. And to explain what an egg beater is, it's basically a movement in the water which causes your legs to go in circle patterns. And that causes you to basically kick yourself up out of the water and keep it there, keep yourself there. That is what treading is. That is what egg beatering is. And doing lunges helps improve on that section of your swimming workout. Another exercise is jumps. Jumps are, or specifically dryland jumps, provide a great way to increase your explosive power in the water. And there is hardly a better way to help improve your leg muscles than with a jump set. And of course, you want to try to do 2 or 3 rounds of 10 of these. And let me define what explosive power is, or at least the importance of what explosive power is. When you're playing water polo, explosive power is the amount of energy and the basic speed, the burst of speed at which you will need to have when you are going to need to basically sprint across the pool. Let me give you an example. You're on your team. You're currently defending against the enemy team, and you can see that our team is about to get the ball. Either they shot it and the goalie is about to catch it, or our teammate is about to take the ball from them. No matter which way this happens, if you see this, then you can use your explosive power in your legs and sprint to the other side of the pool. This explosive power can cause you to score a goal for free because the person of which who you were guarding wasn't fast enough to react and wasn't fast enough to catch up either. Meaning that you are basically in front of him and able to take the ball and shoot it into the enemy goal for free. If you can get it past their goalie, that is. Finally, the final exercise are squats. Squats are probably one of the best general and all-around exercises for your legs. They engage multiple muscle groups, and when performed correctly, they are also probably one of the highest calorie burning exercises per move. So here's how you basically do a good squat. You want to usually start with your legs about a little bit more than hip width apart. You want to squat down until your legs are bent at a 90-degree angle. And then you want to stand up and repeat this. Ensure that your back and your torso are straight to ensure that all of the weight of what you have is going onto your legs and you're able to get a good workout out of it. These leg workouts are extremely important and you should take them to heart. Now, let's move on to the next slide. So, water exercises. So to perfect your swimming for water polo, you need to be able to have you want to be able to get good water exercises, and you want to have good quick bursts of speed and interval training to be good in the water. Something of which I also forgot to mention here was that you also want to do these so that you have an extremely long endurance. Below is a water polo set, or at least a swim set, of which you can use to help train yourself in your legs. Of course, there's the 50-meter freestyle, which goes from one side of the pool to the other and back. You have the 12.5-meter sprint, which goes from one side of the pool to half of the pool. You mainly want to, well, of course, sprint this. Next, we have a 20-second egg beater kick, and this is mainly to help improve your leg endurance. And this cycle repeats with slower intervals until you finally are done with it. Next slide, please. Sorry. I am now going to go over how the game is played. There are 7 players for each team, as I have already mentioned in the first slide. You have the left wing, so let's say if you look in the image right here, you have the goal. And on the left-hand side, you have a player right there on near the goal. That guy is called the left wing. You have the left flat, which is right below the left wing, and you have the center or point. You then have a right flat and a right wing. All 5 of these create an umbrella shape, and in the center of it, you have a position named set. Finally, of course, you have the goalie, of which is all the way back at your goal. And so I'll go over what all of these positions do. When the main positions of which you will have to take in water polo is set. Set is probably one of the most important players in the game. The reason why set is the most important is that's because if you look in the image actually, you can see that who's the closest to the goal? Set, or the person which is right in front of the goal, is the most important since he is the closest. So as if you were an offense, your goal is to get the ball into set's hand so that they can throw it straight into the goal. They are probably one of the closest and the biggest threat to the enemy team. And you should be guarding set if you are on defense because of his proximity to the goal and how usually set is probably one of the strongest players on the team. So you have to be careful there. Next slide. Thank you. Now let's cover how the possibility if set is too guarded or if he is too properly guarded. So what we would then do is that point would then get the ball. He would pass it off to the left or right. And what that would then do would start a series of events. It would go from left flat down to left wing. And then left flat will then basically they would grab their defender, turn them behind it, and start swimming into the goal. After they start swimming into the goal, the wing will throw the ball over and into the flat's hand, of which is now next to the goal, and the flat will shoot. That's what we call a drive. That plays the drive. Finally, let's get into this final part. We're going to talk about the rules. For example, when the referee calls an ordinary foul, the offended water polo team is awarded a free throw at the point of the foul. This means that they can either take the ball and pass it, or if they're outside this line called the 5-meter line, which is 5 meters away from the goal, that person can take it and shoot it for free straight at the goal. They get one shot at it. Major fouls, on the other hand, may result in water polo players being sent out of the game for 20 seconds. And after receiving 3 major fouls, you're removed from the game. These major fouls, whenever one is called, it's usually called a 6-on-5, since that now the game has turned from a 6v6 to a 6 versus 5. Hence the name 6-on-5, since that the play of the game now changes. Defense is formed into more of an area defense where defensive players now have to guard players of which enter their area, and the offensive players now, since that the positions have opened up, they're able to basically change their positions and ensure a better shot at the goal. And yeah, general water polo rules of water polo. The water polo players must tread water and are not allowed to touch the bottom of the pool, with the exception of the goalkeeper. The ball can be handed from one can only be handled at one time in the one handed by one hand at a time in the pool, with the exception of the goalkeeper as well, who can use both hands to not only catch the ball but also throw the ball. You can't go within the 2 meter goal line, or else you basically get called a foul and the ball is turned over to the other team. There's an exception of this to where if you have the ball in your hand, you can then swim into the 2 meter line. However, if you pass the ball out, you have to immediately get out of the 2 meter line or else it's a turnover. Nobody's basically allowed in there. And of course, then I detail some major fouls, including kicking, striking, deliberate splashing, or interference with a free throw, which is basically interfering with a foul, misconduct or disrespect towards a referee, and of course, holding, sinking of the enemies, or pulling opponents who is not holding the ball. That will be it for the water polo slides. Thank you.
Hey guys, so I'm Kerry and I'm going to talk about the sport of soccer. So how to play? As you start, once this game starts, there's going to be 11 players on each team. There's going to be 2 teams on the field. Each team is going to start on each half of the field, and one ball in the middle. Before the game starts, the ref is going to call 2 captains, one captain from each team, to flip a coin. Whoever wins the coin toss gets to start off the ball. Now, the goal of this game is to score as many points as you can get. Now, how do you score is you have to get the ball completely across the goal line. So this game is split into 2 45-minute half times, which result in a 90-minute game. During the halftime, there's a 10-minute break in between where the players can go take a drink of water and their coach will be talking to them about what they can improve on their game and how to better attack their opponents and score goals. So one very known rule about soccer is that there are no hands allowed except for the goalie. This means that when the ball is in play, a player cannot touch the ball, either intentionally or on purpose. When the player touches the ball, though, the referee will automatically blow his whistle and stop the play right there. There is another exception, though, for players on the field, is when throw-ins. This is when the ball goes beyond the field lines, like the sidelines, and the play has to be restarted by a throw-in, over the head throw-in. And another thing is when a player breaks the rules, the free kick is awarded usually, and there's 2 types of free kicks. There's an indirect free kick and there's direct free kick. So indirect free kicks are when there has to be 2 people on the ball. The first person has to touch the ball before the ball can be kicked to another player. This is usually played when the ball is really close to the other person's goal. Usually when the foul takes place within the 18-yard box, which is the bigger box around the goal. Now, a direct kick is when there's only one person needed to restart the ball and get into play, and that player can directly kick it to another player of his or her choice. So right now, I'm going to talk about some common lineups that most teams use. Obviously, there's many other different lineups that teams can use, but these are just some common ones. So this is generally the most most used soccer formation. This is the 4-3-3 formation. That means there's 4 defenders on the defensive line. There's 3 midfielders in the midfield, as you can see, and there's 3 offensive players. which makes up two wingers, which are on the sides, and one striker, who is the player in the middle. So for the 4-3 formation, some pros are that because there's three midfielders in the midfield section, it creates these three players can create a triangle, which allows the players to always have an option to play the ball to, and having that option creates a lot of opportunities for you to create a opportunity to score a goal and create plays that are beneficial to your team. And the three offensive players, which makes up the two wingers and one striker, they usually with three offensive players like that, you could very easily overrun the opponent's box and easily score a goal. The role of the wingers though on the sides, the left wing and the left wing or left wing and right winger, is that they make runs down the line, which the midfielders can play ball to. The striker, meanwhile, they're the ones usually staying in the center of the field, where the wingers then play the ball that they've received to the striker, and that way the striker can easily one touch the ball and hopefully put it in the back of the net. So some cons about the 4-3-3 formation is that if the midfield if the mid three midfield players get beat, then the whole formation gets pretty much demolished. Um, if the midfield gets beat, the defensive players will have a hard time to recover since they're the last line of defense, and most likely the opponent will have 4 or 5 players already pushing up against the defensive line. That way, the 4 players on the defensive line will not be able to defend properly against the opponent and will result in a goal for the other team. Also, since the midfield are very much centered around the midfield and not on the sidelines, the outside backs on the defensive line, they have to cover a lot more area than any other player on the field, which tires them down. Um, those two positions require lots and lots of stamina. They have to be very, very active for most of the game. Um, so yeah, that position is very tiring and needs a lot of stamina training to make this formation really good. So another popular soccer formation is the 4-4-2 soccer formation. This means that there's 4 defenders on the back line, uh, 4 midfielders, which is broken down into 2 wingers and 2 central midfielders. And for the offensive players, there's 2 strikers. So some pros for this formation is that this formation is very defensive. Since there's 4 midfielders and 4 defensive players, um, when the opponent team has the has possession of the ball, there's usually eight players in total to defend against the goal, um, which is made up of the midfield, 4 midfield players and 4 defensive players. Uh, this 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 way, there's this kind of formation covers a wide area of the field, uh, in length, and if like a right back or left back has the ball or has the opponent coming at them, one of the midfield players can help the defensive player out, and it'll be a 2v1. And the defensive line can easily win back the ball and go on offense. So once the defensive players gain control of the ball, they can usually the right back or left back play a ball into the offensive players, which is the 2 strikers. So the 2 strikers are broken down into a target striker and a second striker. So the target striker is usually more bigger, more aggressive. They're the ones usually being played the ball, like the long ball, across over the heads of the defensive players. That way, the target striker could push their way through the defenders and hopefully be able to get past the defenders. Now, the second striker is more quick, more smaller. They're usually better at dribbling, and so if you're not able to play that long ball behind the defensive line into the target striker, you can play into the second striker, and hopefully that second striker will be able to either play another person the ball behind the defensive line and get your team that point. So some cons about the 4-4-2 formation is that since the formation covers such a large area, the defensive line can be penetrated by the opponent playing a through ball behind the defensive line, which is the gaps left open between each player. And if the opponent team has a really fast striker, that ball through your defensive line will be pretty pretty bad since they'll be able to score a goal. Also, if the defensive line is too far forward, which means they're too pushed up into the opponent's half, there's going to be a lot of space left behind the defensive line, and if the team gets a gains control back of the ball, they'll be uh, the team will be easily counterattacked, and which will lead them to lose another point, or not lose another point. The other team will be able to gain another point and make a gain, give them the lead. So the third most popular formation is the 4-2-3-1 formation. This means that there's four defenders on the back line and two defensive midfielders, which function as help out the midfielders and uh, the defensive players too. They're mostly to close the gap between the offensive midfielders and the defensive players, since when the offensive players are pushing up to score a goal, there's usually a gap left behind between the defensive and midfielders, which can be easily exploited if the opponent gains back the ball rather quickly. And in the and s- so there's going to be two wingers on the wing on the sides of the field to make runs down the line, and one center midfielders to connect the two midfielders to give them an option to play the ball to, and one striker up top. The striker's main role is to mainly get play the ball and hopefully be able to score the goal in the opponent's box. So some pros for the 4-2-3-1 player or formation is that it covers the field very, very well. Unlike the 4-4-2 and the 4-3-3 formations, this one is able to cover field better than any of the other formations. This formation usually used by is usually what people grew up playing since it's a very balanced formation. The two holding midfielders, defensive midfielders, and the three offensive midfielders um, are very concentrated, like are very balanced between offensive and defensive midfielders. Um, so yeah, it covers the midfield area really well, which is vital to the soccer. Also, the on defense there'll be six players usually on defense, and the two defensive midfielders and four defense players. And with that balance, there'll be if the defensive players are able to get the ball back and it's in their possession, there'll be four offensive players ready to provide a counterattack. And if played correctly, on the defending team can bounce back rather quickly and be able to attack the other person's goal and get that be able to score a point. So some cons about the 4-2-3-1 formation is that there's only one striker up top, and that leaves him or her isolated when pushing the goal. And when your team has the ball, and you play it into the striker, and if he or if him or her is alone, that means that the four defenders on their defensive line will get back the ball quickly, and your push to the opponent's goal is pretty much stopped. Also, on the outside defending pairs, which is the right back and left back, there'll be lots of 1v1s with opponents, strikers or wingers, since the midfielders are usually more packed into the middle rather than outside. So the outside backs will be more meet more have more 1v1s with the opponents' offensive players. So let's say you're already in a soccer team and you've done a lot of team building drills already. You want to practice on your own. So some good personal training is juggling. Maybe 1 hour a day will improve your touches by a lot. It'll help your control of the ball too. After about a month, you'll pretty much improve by a lot. Another way to improve on your own is to do liners. Now, the liners is to improve your stamina, and like I said earlier, in the 4-3-3 formation, the outside backs need a lot of stamina to function on the field. So as you can see on the right in the image, there's going to be a small box, big box, and half, and the opponent's big box and small box. For this, you would want to touch every line on field. That includes the small, big, and halfway line. You're going to touch the line, go back, and touch the bigger box, and go back to the goal line. And continue doing that until you touch every line on field. Usually you want to go either 80% or 90% on the sprint of your full sprint. If you're doing like short exercises, you might want to go at 100% full sprint on this to get the most out of this exercise. So another thing to improve your control is to line up cones. So this is for when you want to improve your dribbling. So on a field, on a grass field or turf field, you want to line up cones about 1 feet apart. You could go less if you want. If you want to challenge yourself, maybe put 4 or 5 cones 1 feet apart, and then go zigzag through the cones. And if you're feeling comfortable, then go faster. And if you can't go as fast, go at speed you're comfortable with, and maybe go inside and outside the foot every time you zigzag through the cones. And hopefully, after months of practicing using this drill, your touches and your controlled ball will improve. And that's it for soccer. Thank you.
Tennis. How to play. The game of tennis is played on a rectangular court with a net running across the center. The aim is to hit the ball over the net, landing the ball within the margins of the court, and in a way that results in your opponent being able to return the ball. You win a point every time your opponent is unable to return the ball within the court. Scoring. You need to score 4 points to win a game of tennis. The points are known as 15, 1 point, 30, 2 points, 40, 3 points, and the fourth would result in a winning point in the end of that game. If the score went to 44, this would be known as a deuce. When a game reaches deuce, the players must then win by 2 clear points. To win the game, you must win a certain amount of sets. Best of 3 for women's matches and best of 5 sets for men's matches. Winning a set is simply the first player to win 6 games, but have to be cleared by at least 2 games. If your opponent wins 5 games, you must win the set 7-5. If the set goes to 6-6, then a tiebreak is played, and it's simply the first player to 7 points. The game starts with a coin toss to determine which players must serve first and which side they want to serve from. The server must then serve each point from alternative sides on the baseline. At no point must the server's feet move in front of the baseline on the court prior to hitting their serve. If the server fails to get their first serve, and they may take advantage of the second serve. If they again fail to get their second serve in, then a double fault will be called and the point lost. If the server clips the net but the ball goes in, the server's area still then let is called and they get to take that serve again without penalty. If the ball hits the net and fails to go in the server's area, then it's called and they lose that serve. The receiver may stand where they wish upon the receipt of the serve. If the ball is struck without the serve bouncing, then the server will receive the point. Once the serve has been made, the amount of shots between the players can be unlimited. The point is won by hitting the ball so the opponent fails to return it in the scoring areas. Points are rewarded in scores of 15, 30, and 40. 15 representing 1 point, 30 representing 2, 40 representing 3. You need 4 points to win a game. If the game lands on 40, 40 is seen as deuce. From deuce, the player needs to win 2 consecutive points to win the game. After winning 1 point from deuce, they is on advantage. The player wins the next point to win the game. If they lose, goes back to deuce. To win the set, the player must win 6 games by 2 or more. The opening set will go to the tiebreak. If it ends up 6-6, the players will play first to 7 points. The final set will not have a tiebreak and require players to win by 2 games with no limits. If a player touches the net, distracts the opponent, or impedes in any way, then they automatically lose the point. The ball can hit any part of the line for the point to be called in outside the line, and the ball is out. The balls in tennis match are changed for new balls every 6 games. A player loses a point if they fail to return the ball in either the correct areas on the court, hit the net and doesn't go inside the opponent's area, or fails to return the ball before it bounces twice in their half. Famous male tennis players. Rafael Nadal. Rafael Nadal is considered to be one of the greatest tennis players ever and is called the King of Clay. The Spanish national has won 20 Grand Slam single titles and holds the record of winning 13 French Open championships. He has also had 1 Australian Open, 2 Wimbledon, and 4 US Open titles to his name. I can't pronounce that. Widely considered to be one of the greatest tennis players of all time, he is currently third in the list of the most number of Grand Slam titles won by male players. Also a well-known philanthropist, he founded that foundation in 2007. The foundation aims at helping disadvantaged children. Roger Federer, widely regarded as the single greatest tennis player of all time. Roger Federer has won the most number of men's Grand Slam single titles. He's the only person to be honored with the BBC Overseas Sports Personality of the Year award on 4 occasions. Despite enduring several injuries, Federer continues to dominate the tennis court. Martina Hingis, famous female tennis player Martina Hingis, with 5 Grand Slam single titles and 209 weeks, ranked number 1 in the world. Martina Hingis makes a strong argument to be ranked in the top 10 all time. Factor in her 13 Grand Slam double titles, 7 mixed double titles, and her 2 tour final titles, and such to exclude the Swiss star. Her single career was relatively short due to injuries, and her first retirement came in 2003 at just 22 years of age. So not only has she remained healthy she would have contended for many more Grand Slam single titles. Martina was able to extend her tennis career by playing mostly doubles and had great success with 3 Grand Slam doubles titles in 2017, her final year in competitive tennis. Yvonne Goolagong, often overlooked because she played during the Chris Evert and Martina Navratilova era, Goolagong was the epitome of grace and beauty on the court. Despite playing during one of the most competitive periods in women's tennis, Goolagong was still able to win 7 Grand Slam titles and in 1976 was ranked number 1 in the world. That's a distinction being the only mother since before World War I to have won Wimbledon, having won the title in 1980 after giving birth to her daughter in 1977. The only Grand Slam title to lose her was the U.S. Open, where she reaches the final in 4 consecutive years, 1973 to 1976.